Welcome back to Casuals Corner Podcast. You're joined by myself and Frankie. We've had a little hiatus, but we are back dropping you a podcast to everything in the MMA world every single Monday. So make sure that you subscribe and keep up with the podcast on Spotify. Frank, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. It's been too long. I don't know the last one we did of these.
A long time ago.
To dust the cobwebs off the microphone.
So,
ready to get back to it.
So for a lot of people that obviously don't know you as well, you have a fight coming up in October.
I do.
And this is what I wanted to start with before we jump into UFC Paris, because I just wanted to have a little chat about this anyway, because I was quite excited about it.
I'm getting interviewed now.
No, this is what it was. Like I said, before we get to UFC Paris, which we will in a second, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, just how it's going at the moment, mate.
Yeah, it's really good. So I got some, you could say, bad news the other day. My original opponent had pulled out because he's injured or whatever. So I've got a new opponent and I'm fighting for a belt. So that's exciting. It's exciting stuff. It's down in Bournemouth. Good opponent. I think I'm better, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited.
So this is what I wanted to ask you, because obviously when you started mixed martial arts, or you started just getting into it, you went heavy on the striking, and then the last time I spoke to you, you got heavy into the wrestling, and now you just found your love of wrestling. So I wanted to sort of ask how you've been blending it together, how you've been prioritizing it. Do you have a specific game plan? Are you focusing more just on the MMA?
So it's super interesting. I was actually speaking to my brother about this earlier. I got into it originally with jiu-jitsu, fell in love with striking, fell back in love with jiu-jitsu, fell in love with wrestling, and then I just love it all. So I like to say I've got like a striking base, but I think of myself as pretty well-rounded. I probably grapple nowadays more than I strike. The game plan for this guy, I'm just going to see how the fight plays out. I think what I quite like is I think I'm better everywhere, not in an arrogant way, but I think I could beat him on the feet. I think I could take him down, keep him there. So it's just a case of how it plays out. If we're on the feet and I'm getting hit a little bit too much for my liking, I might shoot, I might fake the shot and come up with some hands. So I'm just going to be loose in there. My goal nowadays is just perform well, and the rest will sort itself out. If I can do what I think I can do, then it's just a case of performing on the night for me.
The one thing that I noticed, especially when we went to your first fight, because when you are a fight fan and you go to a regional scene, I think because it's so much more intimate, because you sometimes know people on the card, because you can go backstage and sort of lurk around the fighters a little bit more, you get a bit more of a taste of it. The one thing that I noticed the most, and the thing that stood out to me, is the idea of peaking at a certain time, a certain hour, a certain day, and trying to accumulate literally months, if not years in some cases, of hard work coming down to a pinnacle of a point, and then trying to get your energy levels, trying to get your workouts, your sweat all on the right point, and then go and perform.
Yeah, 100%, because you're like around a lot of people you see, they've come here to watch you, you're chatting to them before you go and get warmed up. You don't know how long the fights are going to last. So you're like, kind of like, I don't want to get too up for this now. I don't want to be not up for it enough. So it's kind of like it's a balancing act. Last time when I fought kickboxing, I was deliberately not getting too up for it. It's quite funny. I was watching Ricky Gervais's stand-up in the changing room. I thought I can't be like too amped up if I'm watching it. If I'm watching comedy. So that was one of my little tricks. It's definitely something I struggle with. I get into my own head, like I want to fight. Like I was in the car park, like I'm ready to fucking fight now, and like you can't hold on, you can't walk around all day feeling like that, So it's definitely an interesting one and an experience. But yeah, I'd say you're bang on with that.
That was the thing, right? Because obviously you always hear the cliche on commentary of the experience, and just as a fan, right, you don't really get a sense of what that actually is or what that actually means until you realise the more times that you do just the procedure, not even necessarily the fight, just the procedure of getting ready, getting warmed up, getting to the venue, getting your eating right, getting your weight right, it just becomes second nature, right? Because I remember even watching your first one, there's so many elements to just walking into the cage that I get it when people now say, the fight is the easy part, because that's the sort of bit you've been training for, right? But you can't really train for the other parts. But I'm buzzing for it. We're going to get a little hotel down in Bournemouth. My second home. Honestly, when you said that it's going to be in Bournemouth, I couldn't have actually been more excited.
For a belt as well. Give me that.
How does that work? So if you're just champion this organisation now, what happens? Do you have to go and defend the belt? Can you just go to different organisations?
Yeah, I can go to different organisations. I can vacate, keep the belt, and tell whoever I want I'm the champ. I can wear it on the night out and eat a slice of pizza like Leon. I don't think it's as set in stone as the big leagues. I'm not contracted. It's just it's a fight, but I get a belt if I win, and it's not even 5 rounds. It's 3, which I'm all for.
Oh, it's not a 5-rounder.
It's not. It's a 3-rounder because it was short notice, and I think some promotions just do things that way. I was like, cool, that's not a problem.
Yeah, that'd be a little bit cruel to chuck you in on last minute's notice for a 5-rounder. But anyway, let's jump into UFC Paris because
recent events.
This was actually, every time I was watching it, I kept reminding myself that it seemed a little bit cliche, but it was true. This was an historical event. When I was watching it, I felt like I was just watching and witnessing history, right? It's kind of crazy to think that this sport was illegal only a couple of years ago, and now they had a sold-out arena. The crowd was unbelievable, actually. I had my earphones on, and when I watched the replays of London, it had that sort of same vibe, that same atmosphere. Obviously, everyone was just pissed up, wasn't they? There was just loads of French bods getting bang on the wine. I loved it.
Yeah,
but let's get stuck into the main event. Taito Avasa, Cyril Gane. What are your thoughts?
So, like, going in, I always thought it's stylistically a tough fight for Taito Avasa, and it's like, how can you not love Tuivasa? But it was good. It delivered as a main event. I think it was just no one was taking that from Cyril. You know what I mean? It was his moment, but it wasn't a complete domination. It's just. Ty's good. If you hurt him, he hurts so many people when he's been hurt, and he fires back. So he had Gane wobbly, but really good fight. Kind of played out how I thought it would. It's interesting to see what's next for both. What did you think?
The pressure. When I look at Derek Lewis most recently, who fought in Houston and has seemingly lost about 6 on the spin in his hometown, which can't be easy. Then I look at Cyril Gane, right? Again, bigger occasion, first time out in France. They're sort of poster boy of French MMA, and rightly so, because he's the full package, right? He's the full package. Cyril Gane is the full package. Every time I look at him, he's the nicest geezer. He's smiley as anything. He dresses cool, and he's the hardest geezer in the world. Pretty much.
He's actually quite funny as well. Like, I watch one of his documentaries. He's actually quite funny. He's got a good sense of humour.
He done it with the full reptile boys, right?
I believe so. He was in an ice bar talking about smoking ganja and stuff. He's like, after the fact, I smoke. It was good. It was funny.
I like Cyril Gane. So you must think, going into there, he looked cool as a cucumber, but you must think the nerves and the anticipation and how many people have come out to watch him and watch him fight. But the thing is, we've seen him with that sort of pressure before against Ngannou, right? And he is, like I said, he's a cool customer. So obviously he's going to be nervous, but he doesn't let it affect his performance. Everyone was saying how bad of a matchup this was for Ty, but the truth of it is, Gane's a bad matchup for anyone. You know what I mean? He can do everything, right? So he's not going to be a favourable matchup for anyone. He can strike, he can kick, he can punch, he can knee, he can elbow, he can submit you. You know what I mean? He can snap your ankle, so he can literally do everything. So it wasn't going to be easy, but every fight that Ty goes into, you know that he's going to have a chance. He's more than a puncher's chance, because I think that, to be fair, I think his skills going into it were a little bit overlooked. I think he's got good combinations, which you don't often get at heavyweight a lot. You don't usually see people putting together sort of 5-6 punches, do you know what I mean? Especially with that sort of power. Good knees.
Rip the body as well.
He rips the body. Although he's obviously got those big, powerful shots, he does have quite a bit of diversity as well, and he's got one of the nastiest low kicks. I was wondering how that was going to sort of play out, right? Because we've seen him stop people with low kicks before, and obviously Gane's movement is one of his biggest weapons. So I was interested to see that, but those teeps, that was the nasty point, right? When he just invested into that body, and I thought that was clever from Gane, because although he moves quite well, you start digging into his body, and he's got enough of a target to hit. And that was
It is one of them. That definitely plays a factor.
That was the beginning and the end. That beer belly was holding up, and then it was just sort of like a countdown clock, right? It was just like a health bar, and you could see it getting lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, it was going.
But that was it.
Yeah, those teeps are horrible. Like, a lot of guys used to push teeps, just to cover distance, but stabbing your toes into someone's kind of midriff is draining on the gas tank. McGregor kind of brought it into not bought into the sport, but he made it kind of a thing, and everyone's stabbing those deeps, and it's just drains your gas tank.
There'll be a lot of people, obviously, watching this that don't necessarily train or they don't fight. As someone who does, when you're there, guard up, 4-ounce gloves, and someone's sticking their toes into your rib cage, what does that feel like? What's that doing to you mentally, physically?
Makes you just feel like weak. Like, if anyone's ever been winded, like if you've ever been winded and you're kind of like short of breath, you're like, oh my god, I can't breathe. It's just like your body feels like it's going to shut down, and it gets to a point where you can be the toughest guy ever, but your body's just going to go. It's not a case of how bad you want to stay up. Your body will shut down. Especially you get enough to the body, it just drains and drains and drains. And you know, he's accurate with it. He's big, he's powerful, he's stabbing it in, he's jabbing you up high, faking to the body. It was just a bad spot. But the toughness was impressive, I thought, from Tuivasa. You could see physically, like, he could have easily broken. You could see it in his eyes. He was like, he took a deep breath, he dropped his hands, and he sort of shook his head. He was like, no, actually, I'm still in this fight. I'm going to fight. So, like, I don't think he lost many fans. Well, he didn't lose any fans, but I think he actually gained fans from his toughness, and he's always going to be a fan favorite.
Banger from Sydney, Australia.
Oh, mate.
I love it. I love it. I love his whole stick, but it's exactly like what you said. Anyone could have forgiven him for breaking at certain points, but it was like what you said, he sort of realised and was like, no, I'm in this fight. And that's what I thought was actually quite clever from Cyril Gane, because when you're headhunting, right, he just has a different level chin. Mark Hunt 2.0.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't going down, right? You had to do something different. That head kick that he ate, that was insanity.
That was so weird, by the way. I thought he was like... Because there was a pause. I thought he was like pretending to be rocked, like messing around. But I looked back at it and I was like, oh no, he was rocked. It was just sort of like a shot that was delayed. Then his legs started going. But yeah, he ate like a flush head kick from Gane.
It reminded me of Crow Cop v Mark Hunt when he drops him with that high kick and he just stands up and starts grinning. Yeah, which sort of begs a question. If you're the matchmakers, you're sitting in the war room this Tuesday, what are you doing with that heavyweight division? What are you doing with Cyril Gane and what are you doing with Taito Vasa? Because obviously it's a little bit murky at the moment at 220. I don't know why I called it 220 at heavyweight.
So, obviously he's out, but when there was like 220, there was four. So there was Aspinall, Tuivasa, Gane and Blades. I really thought that Aspinall and Tuivasa were going to fight in London. I really thought that was going to be the fight they were going to give him. I thought it was quite a good matchup. Then I thought they was going to give Blades to Gane. Obviously Aspinall's out, but I thought it was like not officially like a tournament between those four, but I thought they'd all fight it out kind of and see who came on top. It's just unfortunate about Aspinall. You know?
Yeah, that was horrible.
He'll be out for a
Obviously,
bit.
we was there, and it was...
Yeah,
I don't know, it was just... It's what I said to you at the time. It just felt quite harrowing. You get this 250 pound, 6'5" man just laying there screaming, and a whole arena which has come and bought tickets to see him ultimately just empties out into like the abyss.
It's so weird. Like one moment can make that whole room change. It's nuts. It's actually nuts.
You were right. They done it as a sort of Grand Prix, right? Where that was ultimately what they were going for. But obviously we've got that with Tom Aspinall now. I think that Taito Vasa probably goes and fights Marcin Tybura. Probably. I think that's quite a good fight for him. And then I think the fight to make really is Cyril Gane, Curtis Blades, which if you actually look at it on paper, that's his toughest matchup. Probably.
Yeah, I was going to say that earlier when you said there's no matchup. I was going to say that's probably, I'd agree.
That's his toughest matchup. But then, what? This is the difficult thing, right? Because I don't even really like getting into the John Jones conversation because you never quite know.
It's hard.
But do you go in and make, because potentially Francis isn't going to be, well, I don't think he's going to be ready for December. I don't think he's going to make it back in time.
No.
So that means that come December time, you're probably going to want to make an interim title. Do you then stick in Cyril Gane versus John Jones?
I'd love that fight. I think that's actually a really good fight for John Jones, but there's a lot of rumblings about Stipe. People keep sleeping on Stipe. A lot of people are saying him versus John. I think that could be a good interim title fight. I think Stipe, deserves to get a little bit back in the mix, or at least an opportunity against a big name to get back in the mix for an interim title. Do you know what I mean? To keep his kind of position, because people don't talk about him when they say like the heavyweight landscape. You know, they're like, oh,
But the truth of that is,
never gets a look in.
as wrong or as right as it is, that's his fault, really. That's his own fault, because he's done everything to cement himself. You're 100% right in that conversation. He's the heavyweight greatest of all time, so 100% he should be there. However, he goes missing for however long, you know, and there's rumblings of him retiring. I think that's just people making things up, to be honest. I haven't heard anything of that happening. I think that's just people speaking for the sake of it. But if I'm him, I'm coming out and saying, no, I'm fighting for that interim belt if it's there, or I want the next title fight, or I want this, you know, and just sort of stamping his name on it.
Give me John.
I'll just come out and be like, give me John, actually. Give me John Bones Jones.
100%.
Because I need to see him fight now. I'm bored of the training videos. I'm bored of seeing him score. I'm bored of seeing him. I want to see what he looks like as this new reformed 260 tank. Because we talk about Cyril Gane, and obviously, you know what it's like. You get recency bias with MMA. Love Cyril Gane. Think he's incredible. But we've seen him at a deficit with wrestling. And John Jones is one of the best MMA wrestlers we've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's tough with John because, like, maybe a bit of a hot take, but his last, like, however many fights have been a little bit disappointing, if we're all being honest. Not in terms of, like, performance, but it's just a little bit like, I don't know, I feel like, you know, I want to see more.
I think it is performance, to be fair. I think it is performance. And I was watching a documentary the other day. I'm not going to read into too much to this, but I did read too much into this.
Going deep. It was
all about his sort of head usage and whatnot. And his last two fights were ones that came back as resoundingly clean. So they sort of posed the question of, could that be a factor? Now, I'm not saying that he's nothing without heads. He's obviously incredibly one of the best, if not the best, skilled fighters of all time. But you can't help but think what benefit that has, because it has to with stamina and cardio, recovery, all things like that, right? And then obviously on the other hand, you can paint the narrative of he was getting bored in the 205 division and sort of moved on. But I don't know. Yeah. We'll have to just wait until he eventually comes back and shuts us all up. But this brings us on. I was excited to talk about this one because I know you are a massive Bobby Knuckles fan.
Love Bobby Knuckles. Favourite fighter.
I knew this. What did you think of his performance yesterday?
Oh, he looked class. I would have, obviously, it's not really up to me. I would have loved to have seen 2 more rounds of that. Just him keep peppering Vettori. I think he just looks like vintage Rob Whittaker. It's hard for him in terms of what's next, but like to do that to Vettori, I think it's very impressive. I don't know anyone else's. I think it was more impressive, this might be a hot take, than Izzy's wins over Vettori.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because the thing is as well, it's like that, it's the classic line, styles make fights, right? Izzy is probably the best defensive striker we've ever seen. Defensive striker. Yeah. And Rob speaks about this a lot, right? And Rob's very good on the front foot. And he's good defensive striker as well, but he's good on the front foot, which sort of plays into Izzy's hands. He's very defensive, he can keep very safe, and it's not going to look very appealing. But I think when you watch Rob fight, when you watch him fight Kelvin Gastelum, when you watched him fight Vettori last night, the only thing that it didn't show me anything. I knew Rob was that good. Like, I knew Rob was levels, you know. It just showed me, oh my goodness, Adesanya is so much better than we can even comprehend as fans until you're in there standing opposite him, seeing everything he's doing, what he's luring you into, what he's setting you up with. You can't quite understand how good he is, and that's what that sort of showed me yesterday with Rob. I think that's the closest I've ever seen Marvin Vettori to getting finished. He stung him, right?
Yeah, usually he's even at the Izzy fight, he was like, I won that fight. He knew. Yeah, he got stung. He nearly ran him onto a couple head kicks, smashing the body up. Just impressive from Rob.
I do think
it's crazy actually that Izzy's beat both of them twice, by the way, in the
UFC.
UFC.
In the last 5 years, Marvin Vettori hasn't lost to anyone not called Adesanya, and for Rob Whittaker, that's the last 8 years. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of insanity, right? And then just to chuck another one out there for you, Rob Whittaker has beat. So this is the thing I was just going to come on to, right? Everyone talks about Colby being the best number one, right? I don't know why Max Holloway gets left out of the conversation, but they say Colby's the best number one. I don't think Colby has actually beat any ranked opponents Why Masvidal? But I don't even know if he's in the rankings at this point. I mean, whether he should be or not, I don't know. But anyway, Rob Whittaker has beat 4 of the top 5. No one else has done that.
Yeah. Rob's running through it.
And it sort of shows you, right, is you have the middleweight division and then you've got Bobby Knuckles because, like you said, that was class. And if that was a 5-rounder, I think that could be the first time that we saw Vettori getting finished because he had no answers. He had no answers for him. The thing about Vettori, right, and let me know what you think about this. I think he's well-rounded. I think he's got good skills.
100%.
But, like the classic line, there's levels to this. I don't think he quite realises the levels that there is in striking. He's got nice fundamentals, nice 1-2s. We see him land good shots. But against Paulo Costa, right, I think it was quite a favourable matchup. He sort of plants his feet, comes forward, and he's a very aggressive. Not got great footwork. It's not going to start cutting you off against the cage and corralling you up. But Vettori's not got that ability. So when he comes up against someone like Whittaker, Whittaker's footwork's just some of the best, right?
In and out.
And he's just doing things that he doesn't even know can happen until we see it in front of him. And he's like, why can't I land a jab on this geezer?
Yeah. Then you're in a fight that you thought was going to be a lot easier than it is, and then Bobby's just bouncing in and out and hitting you with right hands, and a right shin's flying behind it. You're like, oh.
Went for one of them at the weigh-ins.
I don't like that. I think that was just a little bit of mind games because I think Rob does well when he's good mates with his opponent, and I think he was like just trying to get in his head a bit. But it's Bobby Knuckles; he's not scared.
That's a good point, to be fair, because obviously when he was a little bit sort of like that with Izzy the first time, that's a good point. Didn't really see it like that. So if
you're
setting up that next fight, Marvin Vettori, where are you going with that one? Because we know he's not there, but he's also not there, you know?
I was going to say Strickland, but they're actually mates, aren't they? Him and Strickland. Are they mates?
I think they've trained together.
Would they fight?
Yeah.
He said they'd fight. They'd fight. Maybe,
I think they'd fight.
But I think he said they'd only fight for a belt.
That is not happening.
I don't know. Maybe I'm pulling that. No, I think
you could be right. To be fair, let's call. To be fair, Strickland's got like a thumb surgery that he's going through. He's got like an infection.
Yeah. Who's he matched against? Cannonier.
So I think that naturally probably tees up Vettori Cannonier, right?
Yeah, I'll watch that. Thing is, it's a guy coming off a lot. Well, they're both coming off losses, I suppose. But Cannonier was meant to be fighting. Was that next weekend?
I think so.
When was the Strickland fight?
Yeah, I think it is meant for next week.
Yeah.
Could be making it. There's too many fights. I can't keep up. That's what I was saying yesterday.
Yeah. It's a good time to be an MMA fan.
Someone was asking me about fight. I was like, mate, they get announced every second. It's hard to stay on top of.
I just tune in every weekend and I'm pleasantly surprised.
But what do you do with Whittaker? This is the awkward thing now.
Bobby Knuckles. Has he fought Costa? He hasn't, has he?
No, he's the only one he hasn't fought.
I know it doesn't in terms of division probably make that much sense, but I would really like to see that fight. I really would like that fight. Costa coming off a nice win, a good win, very good win against Rockhold. Maybe in the future. But Rob didn't take too much damage in this fight. Costa did. But I'd really like to see that fight. I don't know where that leaves the division, but I think that's the one guy. And I think Rob would probably be happy to, he'd just take that fight and then he's there, and you don't know how the Piera Adesanya match is going to play out. It gives it time to play out a little bit and it might be a whole new landscape and he might beat him, then it opens up a whole new thing. So that's what I would do personally.
Yeah, I think that just sort of... I think the middleweight division's a little bit messy, and until we get that title picture, we're not going to get a clear idea there. So I think it is. I think that is a good matchup. I think he does the same thing, by the way. I think... Yeah, 100%. The exact same thing. I think it looks...
That's why I'm calling for that.
I don't think it looks any different to the Costa-Izzy fight, to be perfectly honest. I don't think it looks any different. The one, whilst we're on the middleweight, and then we'll come on to the next fight, this Paris card, and then we'll have a look at a couple other things. But I don't know if this was on the prelims, so I'm not sure if you caught it, but Abus Magomedov.
Was it a 19-second
Correct.
Finish?
All too familiar with those.
Yes, unfortunately. Harsh reality. I caught it. It annoyed me a little bit. So we turned on the pay-per-view that we bought and paid for, and it was he was there just winning, and they didn't replay the whole fight. I was like, it's 19 seconds, just replay it for us. But I saw the finish. Very
So
impressive.
it started. I'll tell you how it started because you probably saw the end of it. If you saw the finishing sequence, then I'll just explain the start of it. So the interesting bit about this is Stoltzfus was number 2, right, in Germany, which sort of tells me number 2 ranked German middleweights, right, which kind of tells me that there's not a great depth of German middleweights because Stoltzfus is limited, I would say, in terms of skill set when it comes to striking, especially. And Magomedov is number 1. So this was actually kind of an interesting spin because it was like 1 versus 2 in the they're both German. So Magomedov's from Dagestan, obviously, but then went to live in Germany, and he fights from Germany now, right? So 1 versus 2, and it started off, the first strike he threw was a teep to the mouth, and his toes entered his mouth. Like he had tootsies, like in his mouth, and then you saw the finishing sequence, right? And it was 19 seconds, and it was brutal. Vicious. But that's he's quite exciting, right? I think he's going to sort of get the special treatment to the front of the queue quite quickly. Obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the title fight, but he's a Dagestani wrestler. That's his bread and butter, but he is a striker. Yeah. He is actually a very, very well established striker. So he's a dangerous guy at the 185 pounds.
Some of these guys nowadays, it's just levels that they could just like born wrestling. They've got like world class striking. It's nuts, and they're just like not even ranked yet in the UFC.
Well, I think the recipe is like if you can just be born into Dagestan, and then you just go to like a striking country, and then you've got like the perfect DNA. But this brings us on to the British people's main event. Yes. Obviously, we had to 100%. Get this one in there. We should have probably started this one, to be honest. I wanted to give it some limelight. But Nathaniel Wood versus Charles Jourdain. Now, going into this, I know you've been a big fan of Charles Jourdain for a minute. The same as myself. 100%. Like he brings it every time. He's exciting as anything. He's exciting. And he's Charles Air Jourdain. Like he's always got a little. Yeah, he's quite cool. Yeah. He's a pretty cool guy. He's quite trendy. He's got a very attractive girlfriend.
Slick. Not bad.
So what?
Shocked me.
Yeah. How did you see this fight? How did you feel about this one?
I loved it straight away. When I was told that this matchup was happening, I was like, you know, when you love a matchup, right? But you are a massive fan of both guys. So you're like, oh, I love this fight so much, but I don't like. I always root for the Brit, right? But it's like I don't necessarily want to see Charles lose. Although I'll always support the Brit, especially Nathaniel. So I was like, this is just such a good fight. So I'll appreciate it for what it is, and it didn't disappoint. Nathaniel's sharp. He's fast. He looks good at 145. All his performances have been like very, very impressive. Good fight. I think he showed his skills, his weapons. I think he just had more weapons than Charles did. The teep, the calf kick, his hands are razor. So I think he just showed the trips. The trips, they're so good. They're so, like he said in the interview, like who wants to waste energy on like a fucking blast double leg when I can just bomb. It almost looked like, this is going to sound silly, but he was doing it against someone that like never trained, if that makes sense. He was doing it so effortless that it looked like that shouldn't work. How are you doing that? But it was like he hit it like 5 times, I want to say. It looked like he got someone in school and tripped him over. But it was like it was money. You couldn't miss. I need to learn that. I think the
thing is as well is that the way they score takedowns now, right, is if you don't do anything with the position, they just call it a change of position. So even if you get a blast double, right, and you get the person down to the mat, if you just wet blanket them for a few seconds and then they just get up, they work to their feet, it doesn't even, it counts as a takedown, but it's not sort of factored into the scoring criteria, right? So it's just called a change of position. So what I'm saying is if you're going to get someone down to the floor, it's like what you said, like why waste energy if you've got those in your back pocket? But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he had more tools, right? I think the thing that I was on a live stream and I was just sort of screaming my head off. But the things that Nathaniel does so well is he kicks like a mule. That low kick is deadly, and he was timing it so well as well when Jourdain was like in the air, so he was like dropping it. He was like, Jourdain was sort of like dropping him with it, which was impressive. And then he's just got a really, really quick and strong left hook. And like you said, when you get these matchups every now and again, Jourdain and Shane Burgos, which I actually think Shane Burgos bottled a little bit. I didn't want to see him grapple that much. I think Shane anyway, I love Shane Burgos, so I'm not going to go into that. But you see these matchups on paper and you think, right, that's a guaranteed banger, potential fight of the night, put it
That's
there.
a banger.
And I'd already done that with this one. And someone asked me on my live stream, and I was like, oh, you nervous for him? And I was like, not really, actually. I was more nervous for the Charles Rosa fight because it was the first fight at 145, because I hadn't seen him in a long time, like fighting in a long time.
Yeah.
Because it was only 6 weeks ago, and I knew what he'd done there. Literally.
Yeah. We get to see that live as well in the flesh.
30-26 on the scorecards?
Yeah. I think against Rosa. Yeah,
That's the most dominant scorecards I've seen for a long time. For a very, very long time. And the interesting
100%.
thing about that is it sort of shows a lot of people, because obviously there's so much noise around, is he big enough to go 145 or he's doing it? It shows a lot of people that if you don't, not for everyone, it's not going to be for everyone, but if you don't do that weight cut, if you can actually spend more time on your strength and conditioning, you spend more time, because you know what it's like. When you can eat more calories, you can sleep better, you can recover better, you can run better, you can hit harder, you know?
Enjoy life more.
You know what it's like. Tell me what tell me what it's like from a fighter's perspective, not having to restrict yourself and look at a training camp like just pure dieting.
Oh, it's the best. Like, so I had it for like a good stint after I last fought, and I wasn't eating shit at all, but I was eating to fuel, and it was like I feel on fire here. I feel strong. I'm less injured. I was lifting. I was eating like a lot, but of good stuff. Like I'd go home and just not even think about tracking. I'd eat just like loads of fruit, protein. Like, oh, I love it. I'm dieting now, so I could go on for ages about how good food is. But yeah, it's great. Eating to fuel is just the one. It's what you're meant to do, right? Like realistically, like, you're going into a fist fight, you should be as fueled. But obviously, we've got weight classes for a reason. But yeah, it's a game changer for sure. And like, I'd imagine he's just happier in life, which is like a huge factor, you know. Like, if you can like wake up every day and be like, oh my god, I get to train, I feel great. You're gonna do anything. Do you know what I mean? Like anything you enjoy doing, you're gonna do better.
100%. That was exactly what I was just about to say. It's just that overall happiness thing. I know what it's like, sort of cutting your calories, and you've dieted. I've done all those things, and it's just a mental drain. And it's like what you said, because from that first second that you wake up and you've just got energy, you've just got a lot more energy, and you've slept better and you've recovered better, and you don't even really realize it's going on. It's like, cool, I've got training, or I'm looking forward to this, or like. Even just things away from fighting, like he mentioned, like I can look forward to going out with my missus or having something to eat after or whatever it may be. It just changes the whole landscape of your career from doing it as like a job almost, which obviously it is, to doing it more as like a hobby, something you enjoy is what I mean by that. Obviously it's still very much his job, and he got paid twice and he's in a winning column. So yeah, buzzing for that.
Did he get the bonus?
I don't know if he did. They chucked some random non-Dana White person out in the post-press conference.
Oh, really? Yeah. That Mark Zuckerberg looking guy.
Beautiful segue. Next on.
Oh, yes.
Next on segue. So this is what I wanted to throw out to you, because yesterday I saw some. I just want your thoughts on this. I saw some footage of Mark Zuckerberg floating about of training MMA. What do you reckon about that?
I think it's great. I saw him on Rogan. He was like, I can't believe I never did jiu-jitsu before I did jiu-jitsu, you know, and he's clearly getting trained by that guy, but that guy's like a really good training partner. Like, you're letting him work, but he's also hitting him. So he's essentially sparring, but just not getting, you know, I think it's great. Why not? I think it's cool. Like, he hit an arm off from the bottom, he hit a sweep from the dogfight position. It's great. Why not? Striking needs a little bit of work. If he's ever looking for an opponent and he can put a big purse up, I'm down, whatever weight he wants to go. But yeah, I think it's cool.
I thought it was good, and I just put an Instagram out about it actually, and I put in the caption, which is true. It's not just mixed martial arts. I know it from a sort of gym perspective as well. But you do these things. And definitely mixed martial arts, it really gives you those foundations, as holistic as zany as it sounds, but it gives you those foundations for life, right? You get more disciplined, you get more accountable, you get more sort of willing to work and to accept adversity in a lot of times, and working through that. And 100%. That's transferable literally through anything. So as someone as accomplished as Mark Zuckerberg, he's just, the thing is now, it's like, even when he's not working, quote unquote, he's still working. He's still working at those attributes which transfer over straight away to Facebook. And actually on the caption that I wrote, said, recently we saw Tom Hardy locking in armbars. And I know that you won't bring this up, but obviously for the viewers that don't know, you've obviously trained with him here and there in jiu-jitsu. What's he like? Tell me about what's he like? Where's his skill level at?
Do you know, he's legit. Like, he is very legit. He's got he's very jiu-jitsu. Like, it's not like a wrestling sort of, but like, he plays good jiu-jitsu. He's very good off his back. He's got good footlocks. He works with a guy from Yorkshire called the Yorkshire Gripper. is his jiu-jitsu name, and he come and did a seminar on footlocks and stuff. So it's really cool, and he's bang into it. Like, he trains hard. You know, he's in there a lot, like doing like extra rolls, picking people's brains on technique. So he's into it. So yeah, he's good. Like, you know, winning a blue belt comp as well is actually no joke. Like, there's some savage competition blue belts out there, and to tap them.
Yeah,
impressive.
no, you are right, and like you said, a blue belt sometimes is a little bit overlooked because you think of the rankings, right? And you think, it's just a blue belt. But when you actually see the level of these guys, I remember going to one of a jiu-jitsu tournament, obviously just watching it, and I saw supposed white belts, and in my head I'm thinking, oh right, this fella's rocked up to the dojo a couple of times for the last 3 months and he's decided, I fancy a little bit of competition. No, you got white belts in smacking in omoplatas. I was like, I'm not so sure about this.
Yeah, it's no joke. It's no joke. There's some sandbaggers out there for
100%.
sure. But yeah,
when you see him compete or you see him in the gym, right? Just the last one on this. Do you see people approach it differently? Do you see people try harder? Do you see people try and, or maybe give him a little bit more? Do people change their sort of approach at all? Or is it just, he's got the gi on, it is what it is?
No, I think what's nice is that, and I'd imagine he likes this as well, like, who you are when you're rolling doesn't matter. You could be anyone, you know, like, he's a legit, like, A-list actor, but when you're rolling, it's not like, not to be rude, but like, no one gives a fuck how many films you've been in, you know, you're just rolling. So I think that's quite a nice part of it. Like, your outside life doesn't really carry over to the mats.
I heard,
you know?
James Smith talked about this recently, actually, and if you haven't, or if anyone's listening that hasn't, his interview that he done recently, or his podcast that he done recently with Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, is brilliant. He's got two episodes of it, and I loved both of them. But he spoke about the same thing, right? It's when you go onto that mat, is very, and this goes back to the Mark Zuckerberg thing. It's very humbling because, like you said, you don't take in this notoriety, you don't take in this fame. You are literally just another person, and you're another person to compete against, right? And it's sort of all egos at the door. And again, talking about sort of the training aspect and how transferable it is, that's an amazing point. But that brings me onto just another topic. So I wrote down a couple of just topics to discuss, and obviously next week we'll have our main boy Joe firing
Amazing.
Firing these out.
Can't wait.
Bring it up, Joe. That's what you got to get. That's what we got to get comfortable with.
All that up.
And best believe I'm utilising that as well. Yeah,
he'll love that.
That's his duty. That's his job. But the one that I wanted to sort of pull up and is obviously recently we had the Leon Edwards win, which just we won't go into it too much because I know it's a little bit long ago, but just obviously I haven't spoke to you since that happened, so just take me through it from your perspective, sort of before it, after it, your sort of thoughts and feelings on it, because obviously it's quite an emotional time.
Pound for pound, headshot, dead. It's amazing. That's some of the promo videos coming out are unbelievable. I love it. Truth be told, right, like, I always get behind the Brits, but like, I speak to people about MMA, you know, what do you think about the fights weekend? No one was giving Leon a shot. No one. Everyone was like, I just think this one's going to be too much. Like, if you know, like, if you're in the know, you know he had a chance, but if you were being honest with yourself, you're like, I'm probably going to go with Usman. And he was getting, by the first round, he was getting beat up a bit, you know, he was losing that fight. And then to just pull that out of the bag like that, set him up, fake, bomb, run him into the shin. It's movie stuff. It's Rocky movie.
They played the music right when he was on the cage. That was the bit that I loved from the UFC. Yeah.
Did they? I didn't even see that. Oh, that's so good. That's the UFC. That's the UFC. They
because
know.
His life is, and he's only just come out recently with sort of his whole trajectory. But you look at his life when he was in Jamaica in literal poverty, came over to England. His dad got shot and killed in Birmingham at 13. Turned to sort of the gang sort of culture and life, and then to be chucked into a gym and overturn it in this manner was crazy. And not only, it really is. Like, and people, I don't think before, they heard the name Rocky, but they didn't actually really understand why he was called Rocky. And you look at his journey, including the UFC journey. He got dropped out the rankings. He got, obviously, the eye poke thing he had to overcome when he basically got his title shots like twice, and then COVID, and then this, and then this, and
Khamzat pulled out, got COVID.
Exactly. So he literally has been on a rocky journey, figuratively and metaphorically, and it sort of culminated into this. And not obviously is that going to that's going to change his generations to come, really. Realistically, that's how monumental that is. But when you have a look at, I was even watching that from a selfish perspective, thinking what this is going to do to British MMA, because even a year ago, when I sort of started this thing, and I remember we were talking about it, and we were saying to each other, in the next 5 to 10 years, this sport is just going to erupt in England. It's going to blow. You could feel it, right? You could just feel it was started brimming. We had talent sort of coming through, and you could feel something was coming. And then that has just transcended it. Transcended it into another country. And now in 5 years' time, we're going to have people that are 16, 17, 18, and they're going to be very good MMA competitors, and they're going to be saying it was that night that I watched why I got into MMA. Which brings me on to my question for you, is what I actually wanted to ask you. Do they bring it back to London, and do they put on a stadium tour for us? Stadium.
I think so. Stadium. Wembley. Sell it out. I think so. I think, obviously it's a business. If they wanted to make the big money, I think they'd bring it back here and put Masvidal in there. Not that he deserves it, but that's like, that's the mainstream appeal. You want to sell out Wembley, that's the one. Leon will sell it out with Usman, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think they do. I think they bring it back here and they absolutely blow the roof off that place.
The thing is with Masvidal, right? Because I agree with you, and as much of a pay-per-view star as Masvidal is, when you're making these big fights, right, you have to have this. Obviously, you've got the storyline, you've got the conflict there, but there also needs to be that element of, I really want to know who wins this. I think a lot of people will watch that fight thinking Leon Edwards is going to nick this, but I want to see him beat Masvidal up a little bit. Now, obviously, Masvidal, people will know he's got a chance and whatnot, but because he's on a losing streak, like he is, and because we just watched him in a very sort of lackluster performance on his behalf against Colby, it takes a lot of shine away from Masvidal, right? Obviously, he's still got those draws, he's still going to do numbers, but we don't watch it with that same, and he can become champion sort of thing, it's a little bit off that. So I think that is the money fight, but I'm not sure if they even do it because they need a little bit more of a storyline just for Masvidal. You need to win, like you need at least one win, so maybe Gilbert Burns, if they throw him in there with.
Oh, I like that fight a lot. Not for Masvidal. Actually, it's an interesting fight. It's
because this is the thing, right? I think Burns is at a stage of his career where he's sort of taken a nice bit of shine from Khamzat. He's got a bigger star now. He shines a little bit brighter. He still is obviously going to have title aspirations, but he's getting on a little bit. And I think now, if you put him in a fight with Masvidal, which is an enormous fight in the welterweight division, right? He's going to want to be, as he always sort of is, exciting, explosive. We're not going to see him try and I don't think we're going to see him try and utilize his best strengths against Masvidal's deficit, which is that grappling department, right? And we know how good Burns can be when striking. So I think they just stand it out. I think they stand it out. So I think it favours Masvidal more because he's probably not going to play it as smart. But I don't think it's good match. I don't know. I think Masvidal is a little bit.
I think it's a relatively even matchup. I don't know who I'd swing towards. Burns always comes to fight. I think that's why people like him. He's never gonna try and grind you out and just like sit and lay and pray. But yeah, that's an interesting fight and a good spot for Burns. A big win for. So there's big implications depending on who wins that. You know what I'm trying to say. So that's a big fight for the division. And yeah, then that could open up loads of stuff. I'd quite like to see Leon versus Burns. I probably wouldn't watch. No, I'd watch it all, to be honest with you. So yeah, I like that fight. I like that fight. But I do think the next move is probably Leon.
Segues us quite nicely.
Stand it out.
Segues us quite nicely into next week's card, UFC 279. Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. What did you think of this? When this got made, what were you thinking? How did you first react when you saw this fight?
So I've changed my opinion on it a few times. I keep going back and forth. But at first I was like, that's rough for Nate. Like everyone probably did, right? I was like, yeah, I think they're literally feeding him to the wolves there.
The boars.
The actual wolf. The boars. And then I was like, I was just thinking about Nate. And I was like, that's a 5-round fight though. And I thought about Khamzat's last fight where he didn't blow his load on Burns, but he looked tired and it was 3 rounds. I'm like, Nate's not going anywhere. Like Nate will zombie it up and then just clip you and start teeing off on you. So I think it's going to be closer than people think. This might get clipped and memed off, but I think it's actually a closer fight than people think. But yeah, it's still a very favourable matchup for Khamzat.
I think the funny thing going into it is like what you said firstly. I've gone back and forth on this, right? I've gone back and forth this multiple times, and I heard obviously Dan Hardy came out and said that somebody's going to get an assault charge for this or something crazy.
Oh, mate, yeah.
Always one to sort of speak his mind. But it is true when you think about Nate Diaz just fought Leon Edwards, and no one was having this conversation. This wasn't even a conversation. This was a conversation of like, cool, yeah, I want to watch this fight. So, firstly, there's a bit of a red flag there. Why are we not doing that for that?
Sure.
But secondly, the thing is with this fight is the first thing about Nate Diaz is you always run the risk with him just getting elbowed, opening up a massive bit of scar tissue, and the ref calling.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like, and that's what I always get worried with. And I thought it against. I thought it was going to happen against Leon, especially with Leon's elbows. I think it could quite easily happen again with this. The one thing that I find interesting, right, is coming into this fight, a lot of people like what you just said, and I do agree, is like, this is a 5-round fight. So you can never count Nate Diaz out. Now, the interesting thing about Chimaev is that last fight against Burns, that was the biggest fight of his life, more eyeballs on it than ever before. The first really competitive opponent, and the fact that he wanted to go out and sort of have that wild fight, have that war, get that under his belt sort of thing, right? And obviously we saw how crazy that his coach got, because realistically, Khamzat Chimaev could have stuck him behind his jab, moved, a couple of takedowns, sprinkled him in, and won quite comfortably, I believe. I believe he could have probably done that. But he didn't do that. He wanted the stoppage, and he also... It was a lack of IQ, 100%, but he wanted to get that war. So now, the question, why I'm so interested in this fight is, the question now to me is, Khamzat Chimaev has sort of gone into this realm of notoriety where he's in a really difficult spot, right? Because if he beats Nate Diaz, if he just beats him, not convinced, if he just beats him, he goes on to that title. So the question is now, does he just try to win and try to do everything, game plan what he needs to do to win and move on to the title? Or does he get brought into this emotional battle with one of the biggest stars in the world and try and have this spectacular... Because if he does, bearing in mind that he's still inexperienced, he's still an inexperienced fighter, especially in the sort of in the top of the league. And Nate Diaz is as big as it gets. There's Conor McGregor and there's Nate Diaz, and McGregor's here, but Diaz is here, you know? He's as big as it gets. So, does he come in and fight with his ego? Because if he does, I think that's where you get that gas in, right? That's when you start getting tired.
It's actually a really interesting question. I think he comes from a really smart team, All Stars, and if you look at last time, like, they were like pretty annoyed with him after the Gilbert Burns fight. They were like, "What are you doing? You nearly threw it all away." You know, so I think it'll be a lot more disciplined, especially someone that's like renowned for their durability. I think he comes from a smart team, but it's easy to say that I'm going to go in, feel him out, then you've got Diaz talking shit in front of you, and you're like, I need to hit this guy. Then you hit him, and you might hit him again. He might even hit him again.
Yeah.
He might even hit him again after that. But he's not going anywhere.
And
Do
then
you know what I mean?
he
And
slaps you around the chops and sticks his middle fingers up.
What, motherfucker?
This is the thing, right? And now you've got the entire... Because this is the thing about Khamzat Chimaev. He's transcended himself into this star of where he's sort of in a lose-lose... but not in a lose-lose position, but he's always on the back foot because he always has to outdo this star power that he has, right? And that's a difficult thing to do. Obviously, that's what made McGregor so special, is because he said all these things and then he backed up, because that's the difficult thing. Yeah. And Khamzat has done that to this point. But it's like what you said, is if he starts getting a little bit in his head, Nate Diaz, because it happens to everyone, he drops his guard quite literally for a second, and then bang, he just gets clipped by something. And then it could just, you don't know what sort of fight we're going into the fourth and fifth, where we've never seen Khamzat Chimaev, especially in a fight this magnitude.
Yeah, shit unravels.
You see him caught in a triangle, and Nate's just on his back like this, and he rides off into the sunset. Contract with the UFC done.
Oh, mate. Yeah. That's another interesting talking point about the fight, to be fair. It's his last fight on the contract, so I think they are trying to give him probably the worst matchup possible for him. But, like, if he goes and beats Hums like that, it's a literal big middle fingers up to the UFC.
That's the most Nate Diaz thing you could do.
He'll literally do that today.
That's the most Nate Diaz. The interesting thing, I think, and then we'll come on to the next fight, but when you actually hear Nate Diaz talk about the UFC, I heard him on Ariel Helwani, he doesn't even really want to cut, he doesn't want to cut ties. He just wants to go and do he just wants to go box Jake Paul. And realistically, I don't know why we're being around it. He wants to box Jake Paul for 60 million or something ridiculous, and then probably come back. Because the thing is, a lot of people, and I feel passionately on the Nate Diaz spot, but a lot of people said he's waffling and he's chatting rubbish. But when you actually listen to what Nate Diaz was saying in that interview, right, he goes on to say and basically says, I've been around this sport since it basically started, which is true. He's been one of the biggest names since the beginning of it. True. He's done everything in this sport, obviously apart from win a title, which is true. He holds the first win over McGregor, like arguably one of the biggest wins ever, really, one of. So he says now, he's like, there's not a lot for me to do. There's not a lot for, that's why he said, like, either I fight, can't remember, someone or Francis. And obviously he's not going to fight Francis, but
I think he would,
yeah, 100%. And I would I would love to see it. But he's got a point, right? There's not really much left for him to do, because you could say, oh, but he hasn't fought this person, he hasn't fought... It's like, well, yeah, he's been doing this for the last 20 years. Like, yeah, there's like, this person's a big name, but, like, he's been doing this to big names. Like, he's been having this, like, there's nothing too exciting for him. So, like, I don't even think the belt excites him that much, to be honest with you. I thought I was gonna leave off of that, but no, you're right. I don't think he's massively. And anyway, I think he sort of knows that's just going to be a bit of a sticky one to sort of navigate. So I think that we're going to see him chuck up a triangle in the fourth. I think we're going to see him choke him out.
Oh, really?
I think we're going to see double middle fingers.
Really? I'd love that. I'm not going to lie.
The thing is, like,
that'd be vintage Diaz. It's
going to be hard to do. And Gilbert Burns, couldn't really get. The thing is, as well, Khamzat will get into a war, but he's not dumb. And he knows, like, if Nate's on his back, like, just disengage.
Sure.
So, like, because this is next week, I keep forgetting. I'm going to pull a prediction. Yeah, I'm going to pull a prediction.
So good that that's next week.
Yeah, I want
one from me.
Since it's next week, I keep thinking this is ages in advance.
Yeah, because we'll recap next week. I don't think Chimaev will stop him, but I do think he'll win by decision. But I think he'll get caught like Leon did, but still win. And then Nate will kind of get all the clout of winning without actually winning.
I don't think that Nate's gonna lose this fight. Like, in a sense where the fans, you see what I'm saying? Where he's just gonna, he never does. He never does. He didn't lose against Leon, and Leon beat him for 4 minutes 30 seconds of 24 minutes 30 seconds, which is kind of crazy. Like I said earlier, though, I'm always worried about Diaz. I'm always worried about the cuts, and I don't want to see it end like that. I think 2.5 times out of 10, I think Nate Diaz wins, and I want to see nothing more than one of those 2.5 times out of 10. That's how I'm going to say it.
I'm sitting
on the fence. I'm going to say Khamzat takes it, but I want to Nate Diaz triangle submission more than anything in the world. Which brings us on to our next fight, which is the co-main. There's been a lot made about this card, about how stacked or unstacked it is, but this is quite a juicy co-main. Tony Ferguson, Li Jing Liang at 170.
Leech.
Obviously, Tony on his 170, not debut. Obviously, he's fought there before, but a very long time since he's done that.
But his resurgence. Why don't they call him the Leech? He hasn't even got like a grappling style, really.
Maybe just, I don't know.
Not a striker. I don't know. It rolls off the tongue a little bit better, because I always feel like I'm just butchering it and being really offensive to his actual name.
Give
so
it
I
a
like
go.
Leech.
Yeah, it's a good effort. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, though? I feel like I'm just saying it shit and being offensive. But I like Leech. Li Jing Liang. Okay. But yeah, Leech. Leech versus T Ferg. I'm worried about Tony Ferguson, if I'm being completely honest with you. Like, he's taking shots from Gaethje, and the Leech is definitely, maybe not as good as Gaethje, but probably, like, more powerful. You know, there's weight classes for a reason. So I'm worried that, if I'm being honest, I'm worried that he's going to get hurt quite a bit. I know he's at Jackson Wink now. I don't know if that's going to make... I don't know. I'm kind of excited, but I do think that Tony Ferguson's going to get hurt quite a bit.
Well, he only just got KO'd very recently. Very, very recently, which...
Oh, by Chandler, yeah. I actually forgot about that as well. Yeah,
which sort of worries me a lot, because it hasn't been a long time. Now, I know it's at 170, so at least we've not got the cut to sort of factor in and whatnot. But the thing is, for this fight, is a horrible match. I mean, there's not going to be a good matchup. You're not going to get a good matchup when you're Tony Ferguson, because you're a massive name, so you're going to have to come up against someone fairly legit. The problem with the Leech is he had that performance against Khamzat, and for a lot of people that maybe weren't as familiar with the Leech, probably just thought, who's this scrub? He just got picked up, and but what people probably didn't know is he is very legit. And in his last night out, had a very brutal knockout win. Just to remind it, I think that was his 11th or something, 11th knockout win. Just to remind everyone that, no, he hits hard and he's quick. So...
Did you knock out Ponzinibbio?
I can't remember.
He knocked out Ponzinibbio, I think.
Who was his last fight? You know what? I'm so annoyed that he said this, because I thought, before I jump on, I'm just going to remind myself, refresh who he knocked out. But he had a knockout win. This is why we need Joe. Joe, pull this up for me, please. Next week we'll have this locked in. But
Muslim
Selikov, no. So that wasn't an easy fight for him, and that was and again, not a lot of name value in Selikov, but he's a good fighter, and again, Leech hits hard. And that's the thing with Tony. I was watching it on live stream, and I was like, we've got the old Tony back. He's smiling, he's dropping elbows from the bottom. I was like, this is easy. And then obviously Chandler throws an absolute Hail Mary, and that was the saddest I've been in this sport since I became a fan of the sport. That was the saddest moment I witnessed.
It's hard to watch sometimes, things like that. Like, if a knockout makes you feel sad, you know what I mean? This shouldn't make you feel sad. Like, she should be like, but if you're like, I don't want to see him get, like, KO'd, like, not even a TKO, KO'd, you know? Because he's won a lot of fights, and he's such a good fighter, but he's taken so much damage in his career. He's given out a lot also.
The Leech hits hard, man.
No, the Leech
he hits hard. Now, where I want to see this go, really, I want to see this go to the floor as quick. Leech is a black belt, but you know, there's levels. Yeah. There's levels to it, and obviously Tony's a different level of MMA sort of grappler than mine. So he's a black belt, but he's not as credentialed as Tony on the mat. That Travis Luter black belt's a different sort of. It's a whole different game,
and he submits a lot of guys in MMA.
So I want to see this. I want to see this go down to the mat as quickly as possible. Like, even if I can sort of see it playing out, how Leech may even just, because he throws big, and I can just see him even just clipping him with something, or just sort of stinging him, and maybe even drops him, and then they sort of tumble a little bit. And that's when I think Tony's going to be in his that's what I want to sort of see, and hopefully we see a resurgence of the Dark Knight, because it's a tough matchup. But I'm gonna force you to a prediction. How do you see this one playing out?
Unfortunately, I think that Leech is going to KO him in spectacular fashion. Left hook, calling it. Don't know why.
No, he throws.
No
He throws big opposite sides, right? So, like you said, he'll throw boom, like winds up big on both sides. So those uppercuts and those left hooks, like they come heavy and they come back from China, quite literally.
They're wild, but yeah.
It reminds me of that geezer. I can't remember who it was now. Who beat that geezer and he was like, "Yeah, go back to China," and everyone was like, "What? Why?
Yeah.
Why did you say that? That was not okay." But you.
Worst PR move ever. Like, why would you say that? Just say, I
think it was Cody Durden.
It was.
Chimaev.
Chimaev was like, I'm going to kill him.
Because what you have to remember sometimes is, although, these are elite level athletes on one of the biggest stages in the sport, but you can still just be a redneck who won a few fights on a regional scene and they get chucked in it, you know? Yeah. And that sort of happens every now and again. But, so you're going to go Leach. I'm gonna be hopeful. I'm gonna be hopeful. What I know that this is, you could say this for anything, but Michael Chandler threw that kick. He spoke about it before. He threw that as a rangefinder. He'd never drilled it. You know what I mean? It was a 1 in a million, and I think it really just came at a time which obviously was going to make it look even worse for Tony Ferguson in the landscape.
So dramatic.
Yeah,
dramatic.
It was brutal. So. I'm gonna go with Tony. I'm gonna go with Tony submission. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tony submission, and I think he might catch him in a, I don't know, some sort of front choke series, just on a scramble, on a little wild one.
Yeah, I'd really like that. I really would. But
you're being more rational.
My heart's telling me one thing.
Yeah.
You're going with your heart. I'm going with my head.
I always do. I always want the underdog story as well. So I'm always sort of.
I love T-Ferg as well. He's such a lunatic, but he's such a sick fighter.
But yeah, this card's not thoroughly stacked, but it's got fun fights on it. So I've got one more that I want to talk about.
Yes, I like.
You know what I'm going to say?
I know exactly.
Kevin Holland versus D-Rod.
Versus D-Rod. I love D-Rod. I love calling him D-Rod.
What are you thinking for this one?
D-Rod. I like this fight. D-Rod's good. He's underrated. I think he's not got that name value necessarily. But Holland's just so good. He's just so good to watch. When he's talking shit, he's like bum hitting you with sharp, long shots. I like this fight a lot. Do you want a prediction now, or do you want to say how you feel? How do you feel?
No, I'm with you 100%. I think the reason D-Rod, which I definitely one of the best names, by the way. I feel like it's like a Southern American baseball player name.
Yeah. You have to say D-Rod.
He's tatted up from Cali, loves the smoke. But I 100% with you. A seriously underrated fighter. Seriously underrated. I can't remember off the top of my head what accolade he's got, but it's something like the most significant strikes landed in welterweight history, or something like that. He's highest output. He's got a 6 or 7 strikes landed per minute. He's got crazy hands, seriously good boxing, really nice fundamentals, really quick 1-2.
Just heavy bombs. But I know I've said that. Yeah,
but the thing I love about D-Rod is because he has that Street Fighter style. His punches come from those weird angles. You know what I mean? There's not necessarily a conventional boxing 1-2 back to the chin. It's sort of a little bit weird, a little bit unorthodox, but they land. Yeah, they swang. Yeah, a little swang, a little swang and bang. But technically, and the thing is with his stature as well, he's got such long arms that his takedown defense is so good as well. He's hard to take down, so he keeps it standing very well, and he's very fucking good on the feet. So. This is an exciting fight because you've got to remember as well, is Kevin Holland, we're sort of seeing a new Kevin Holland. Because like you said, I love it when he's just popping people, he's dropping, but he's got that sort of karate vibe, then he's in, he's popping back, he's just chatting to you. But the thing is now is he spoke about, not that long ago, he spoke about having this mushroom trip and that he saw himself becoming champion. And I've heard people talk about this before, and it's quite interesting. He sort of changed his whole approach, and you look at his last couple of fights, and at welterweight, obviously, because he's moving down, we've sort of seen this new version of him, a lot more switched on, a lot more serious. His wrestling's obviously, because he's always been a good grappler, right? I think the narrative was a little bit off on him because of that. You got to remember with Kevin Holland is, again, this is a passion point. I'm a massive Kevin Holland fan. Yeah,
Get it, bro.
massive Kevin
Love
Holland
him.
fan.
Love
But
him.
the narrative was off on him because he thought he got out grappled by Marvin Vettori, right? Most recently.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people forget is he's going into these fights eating to get to 185. Like, he's having big meals on fight week
nuts.
to get to 185, right? And then he's coming against, like, orcs, like Marvin Vettori. Yeah,
The orc.
Who's like an actual tank, who's probably walking in there like close to 200 pounds. So
Easily.
I don't. There was obviously a skill deficit, but I think it was more just a size thing more than anything. But he went away, he worked on his wrestling, and he's a black belt under Travis Lutter. He's got tricky ground game.
Legit.
Like, he's one of the best off it. Yeah,
Long
like
limbs.
he's one of the best off his back in the UFC. Like, you look at his attacks, like,
Dangerous.
because he can.
bro.
This is the thing, right? He can submit you, but then he's got things like elbows, and we saw him what he done against Jacare, right? So he's seriously skillful. So he's added on that takedown defense and that little bit of aggressive wrestling as well. So like both sides of the coin. And now he's gone down to welterweight. He hit hard at middleweight. He was knocking people out. He knocked out Joaquin Buckley.
He hits sharp. He's just like so fast. They're just clean shots, you know.
And
boom, boom, 1-2.
The thing is as well, it's like when you have that karate style, right? And even someone like Rob, because where you blitz, like you'll know, where you like blitz in, you're coming with all your momentum and all your force in, and those sharp shots, like, they're heavier, right? So
yeah. If someone moves into it,
exactly, it's like when two forces meet. So it's like, yeah, he's not the biggest hitter, but he's sharp and he's accurate. So you start chucking him in that that 170 pool, like, I think he's a serious contender. But yeah, how do you see this one playing out?
I think the speed will be a factor for D-Rod. I think he'll be at a speed deficit, even though Holland is coming down from a higher weight class. I think the speed will be a problem. In terms of predictions, D-Rod's going to be hard to finish. He's inherently tough. He's
Mexican.
big, strong. He's not going anywhere. Mexican. You're going to have to put him out, you know. You're going to have to literally put him out like unconscious. But I do think Holland can do that. I think he can run it into something sharp. So yeah, I'd give the advantage to Holland, but I wouldn't be shocked either way. Very, very good matchup from the UFC, and a nice addition to the card. You know, that main event's great, but I don't want it being like boxing where it's just top heavy and we're sitting through prelims that we don't care too much about to get to the main event. We've got 3 juicy fights there, so I'm excited this one's been added. But yeah, I would swing towards Holland.
Decision? You saying a decision?
I think he'll stop him. 3 rounds. Yeah, I think he can stop him in 3 rounds.
That's like you said. He's gonna be difficult to put away, but I can see him doing it. I can see him doing it. I'm gonna play a little bit safer. I'm gonna go Kevin Holland decision. I think he does it over the points, but he's finished like 2 of his last opponents, and he's on a little bit of a roll. He's got that momentum, and yeah,
he's got that mushroom trip.
Yeah, he's got that mushroom trip strength. Watch out for D-Rod. Like, he's like we're saying, his striking's legit.
savage.
But the last one that I wanted to bring up on this card is, I don't know if you're as familiar with him, Jalton Almeida. So this is the thing I like about a lot of these cards now, is because obviously there's so many Dana White's Contender Series fights and things of that nature, is like you're having a lot of these fighters come onto the card. So he was a light heavyweight, and as soon as I saw him, I thought, this kid's a problem. He is, I'll describe him to you. He's about 6'4", rangy as anything, built like a freak athlete, super quick, super powerful, and has elite, like, Dagestan level wrestling. Yeah, came out and just done his business, and everyone was like, wow, okay, started paying attention. And then I think he made his debut at light heavyweight, and then he was like, no, actually, I want to go to heavyweight. Moved up to heavyweight, just packed on a little bit more size, went out against Parker Porter and finished him in literally not much time at all. And he's fighting, he's stepping in last minute for against Shamil Abdurakhimov at heavyweight. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is, this is his second fight, right? This is his second fight at heavyweight. The only reason I bring it up is just to keep an eye on for him, because he's exciting. And we talk about this new breed of heavyweights when we talk about Tom Aspinall and Romanov and Blades even, you know, and Garn.
Yeah, just new breed of athletes.
Exactly,
in general,
new breed of athletes, because you can't get away in the heavyweight division being a Derek Lewis, and mate, he's got D1 wrestling, mate. He's got D1 wrestling.
Bombs. Yeah, just stand up, bro.
Best anti-jiu-jitsu ever. But yeah, you can't get away with being one-dimensional anymore heavyweight division, and people like him are starting to cause problems. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to next week. Yeah, they've not.
Should be good. Where is it?
I want to say Vegas. It's a late
Probably.
one, you know. It's
4 a.m. job.
It's a 3 a.m. main card job. This week was an absolute treat. So we have to sort of petition a little bit more.
Yeah. You know, the next one we've got, this a treat. The Abu Dhabi one, Makhachev versus Islam. Main card, 8 p.m.
That's obscenity, that card.
Big.
That's
big. And it's on at prime time.
We're obviously going to talk a little bit more about that when the time comes. But yeah, that's an absolutely insane card.
Sugar show, baby.
That pretty much wraps us up, to be fair, for our first episode back of Casuals Corner.
Nice.
For everyone that's made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you. To support the page, obviously if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe and the little bell icon to stay up to date. We'll be dropping these every single Monday. If you're listening to podcast, then hit the little subscribe button as well, so you're kept in the loop. Like I said, coming to you every single Monday like clockwork. Appreciate the support. Go join the Discord as well. Starting to get a little tasty Discord community, building out the community, which I'm very happy of. I drop in little exclusive content. I just put in some footages of Sam Patterson ahead of his Dana White's Contender Series fight, which is next month, and he is on the same card as Bo Nickel. So seriously, seriously good timing for that. But yeah,
it's big.
Peace.